When we came back from our excursion, we sang was, "Thank you, Mr. Bus Driver, bus driver, bus driver. Thank you, Mr. Bus Driver, for the great drive." That was us. And if you guys don't understand, I'll break it down even further. I'm eating a red business. No. 2 little birds. That was us. But 2 little birds, everyone can sing, but the pronunciation will tell you what kind of a school you went to. Mouse of the 2 little. It's not little, it's little.
Look at this.
Tshwane FM 93.6.
Oh, hallelujah.
Motivation book ever been written? Now I want you to repeat after me, please. We got to recondition our minds first. Let us say together, good things are supposed to happen to me. Yeah, write that down. I want you to say that to yourself every day. See, we live in a world where we believe that bad things are supposed to happen to us. I remember at a point in my life, Bishop, when things are going good for me, and I said, this is too good to be true. Something is bound to happen. Guess what? It did. Thou shalt decree a thing, it shall be established unto you, and shall accomplish that whereunto it has been sent. Watch your words. Watch what you say about yourself, about your affairs. Be conscious of that on a daily basis. Why? Because your words are powerful. In the beginning was the word. Life and death is in the tongue. Watch what you say. Never say I'm broke. Say I'm overcoming a cash flow problem. Claim what you want, not what you don't want. So affirm, good things are supposed to happen to me, and begin to believe that. Begin to expect that. Now, I was talking to my oldest son, Calvin. We were going for a walk. And I said, Calvin, do you want to be successful? He said, yes, sir, Dad. I said, okay. Kept on walking. Then I stopped and I looked him in the eyes. It's my namesake, my junior. I said, Calvin, we're looking at each other eye to eye now. Do you expect to be successful? Given the fact that you are a single parent of 2 kids, given the fact that you decided not to go to college to further your education, given the fact that you're very talented, but you're behind on your dreams and your bills, do you expect, based upon your performance, based upon what you produce at this point in time in your life, do you expect to be successful? And Calvin got quiet. Because see, if you ask most people at the Manpower Conference, do you want to be successful? Do you want to live a life of productivity? Do you want to live a life of contribution? Do you want to be a better father? Do you want to have your own business? Are there dreams you want? Everybody will say yes. But see, one shows up in conversation. Expectation shows up in behavior. See, I can tell what you expect by what you do. That's why the Bible says, judges a tree by the fruit it bears. Not the fruit that it wants. Not the fruit that it talks about. Not the fruit that it claims. But by what you are doing. See, what you do when you leave here. When the music stops. When the shouting dies down. Your behavior. How you conduct yourself. Writing your goals down. Deciding to enroll in school to get a GED. Deciding to sit at the class with children young enough to be your grandchildren. Decide to find some product, some idea, some service that you can provide so that you can begin to create some value for yourself so you can create wealth. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. It's very important that we begin to learn how to create wealth. I'm not talking about loving money. See, I believe that lack of money is the root of all evil. People are steal for money. People are killed for money. People go to jail for money. Every time the unemployment goes up, in those areas where the unemployment is high, that's where you have the highest incidence of crime and violence. Whenever the unemployment goes up 1% in our community, 10,000 children and women are battered. Well, money makes a difference in your life. I never wanted to be rich. All I've ever wanted to do was to be comfortable. How many of you want to be comfortable? Raise your hands. Then I realized in order to be comfortable, you got to be rich. No friend of mine, people say money won't make you happy, but everybody want to find out for themselves. Rita Davenport say money ain't important, but it's right up there with oxygen. And let me tell you something, fellas, even if you're as homeless as I am, if you got some money, women will find something cute on you. He got earlobes like Denzel, honey. Money makes a difference. I used to be so broke when creditors would call the house, my children would answer the phone and say, my daddy said he ain't home. I was so broke at one time in my life, I walked by a bank and tripped the alarm. I tell you, poverty sucks. You hear me? Repeat after me, please. I'll never be broke again. Yes, write that down. I affirm that I'll never be broke again. Never. Never will I ever be broke again. Let me tell you what money does. Number one, it gives you control over your life. Write that down. Number two, it gives you options. 3, it allows you to live a life of contribution, to contribute to things that you feel strongly about. Like this ministry and the work of Project 2000 will be doing to change the lives of young people. Bishop Jake's vision is that we can have Little League football teams and baseball teams and basketball teams. Then we can have Little League dermatologists and cardiologists and endocrinologists. So he's now establishing an institution, Project 2000, to give our young people the methods and the techniques to reinvent themselves as we go into the next millennium. And this era that Peter Drucker calls the era of the 3 C's: accelerated change, overwhelming complexity, and tremendous competition. So here's the first step to accumulating wealth. If you expect to do it, write this down. You must be willing to do the things today others won't do, in order to have the things tomorrow others won't have. That's why the book of life says the road to life is straight and narrow, and few there be that find it, because few there be that are willing to do the things today others won't do, in order to have the things tomorrow others won't have. What are the things that others won't do? Number one, make discipline a major force in your life. How many of you know if you'd have been more disciplined, you'd be further along to reach your goals right now? Socrates said the undisciplined life is an insane life. The road to life is straight and narrow, because few there be that are willing to discipline themselves. Here's something else that most people won't do. Make it okay to fail. A lot of people, 85% of people, allow their fear of failure to outweigh their desire to succeed. Repeat after me, please.
Okay, you can drop it and add you again.
Is worth doing badly. Yes, anything is worth doing right, as we have been taught, if you know how to do it.
Hear me properly?
But if you don't know how to do it, it's worth doing badly until you get it right.
Okay.
Now write this down. You don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great. The first time I stood up to speak, I stood up and my mind sat down. I looked at the audience and I panicked. I had to introduce a play at school. We're about to start.
Hello? Hi, Ndombi.
Ran out, Mr. Washington. Mr. Brown, where are you going? Mr. Washington,
Ndombi.
I can't think, sir. I don't know. Did you rehearse? Yes, sir, I did. Well, what's wrong? Why did you say your lines? I don't know, sir. I got up and I looked at him and everything.
You know what
Let
I'll
me
do,
do it
man?
another day, please, sir. No, go back out there, Mr. No, Mr.
Because we are battling with Ntombi, I'll start with you and then I'll try and call him.
Mr. Brown, if you run now, you will always be running.
Yeah.
Anything that's worth doing is worth doing badly until you get it right.
You guys were supposed to be both in at
bathroom, sir. Mr. Brown, go back out there. Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, please do that. And then, should I drop this one and then call you back again?
12 angry men directed by
All right, no problem.
Mr. Leroy Washington. And I ran off. The next day, hey, Alfalfa! Hey, yes, Brown, how are you? They dogged me out. They talked about me so bad. The next time another event came up, Mr. Washington, Mr. Brown, you're up. I said, no, Mr. Washington. Everybody says, no, not him. I said, they're right, Mr. Washington, not me. He said, Mr. Brown, you're up. Yes, sir. And I went out, and pretty soon, when people laughed at me, it didn't bother me. They would throw paper, and I could catch it without losing my concentration. And then one day, I came out, and a hush went across the audience because it must have been something about me that indicated that I'd come to myself. And Mr. Washington had been practicing with me to give a presentation. And I looked at the audience and I said, I choose not to be a common man. It's my right to be uncommon if I can. I seek opportunity, not security. I do not wish to be a kept citizen, humbled and dull by having the state look after me. I want to take a calculated risk, to dream and to build, to fail and to succeed. I refuse to live from hand to mouth. I prefer the challenges of life to the guaranteed existence, the thrill of fulfillment to the stale calm of utopia. I will never cower before any master, nor bend to any threat. It's my heritage to stand erect, proud and afraid to face the world boldly and say, this I have done. Girl stood up and said, that's my boyfriend, Hardy. I like me some less brown, baby. But I didn't start off like that. You have something special.
Sure.
You have talents and abilities in you.
Yes.
That you don't even know.
Come on.
So how do we begin to create wealth? Let me give you some ideas. Number one, write this down, knowledge. What knowledge that you have in this economy, part of what we need, that people are willing to pay you for that. Next is talent. What talent? Dion's talent is playing football. I didn't have that as a talent. My talent is talking. To me, my definition of success is doing what you love to do and find somebody to pay you to do it. You want to master your talent. Find out what it is that you love to do. I love to talk. Scripture is another key that says to us what we need to do to begin to develop ourselves. Luke 12:34, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So what do you love to do? And then explore ways in which you can earn a living doing that. Cooking, writing, painting, working with numbers, working with people. The other thing is, not only must you have knowledge, talent, some skill, but the other thing that's important, faith to act on whatever your dream is. See, if you don't believe in yourself, how many people you know that have a lot of talent, a lot of abilities, but they don't believe in themselves? Raise your hands. See, that faith is very important. So the faith to act on those dreams, those desires. Here's scripture that I like very much. Proverbs 16th chapter, 3rd verse. Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established. Commit means to carry into action deliberately. Commit means to make it happen no matter what. Commitment, the difference between next time you have bacon and eggs. The chicken was involved. The pig was committed. He had to give it all up. That's going to take a minute to sink in. All right? See, when you make a commitment, I'm going to become wealthy. When you make it important, when you decide I'm going to do it no matter what, life changes for you. See, most people don't keep their commitments to their commitments. That's why they lead lives of poverty, lives of misery, lives of unhappiness. Socrates said the uncommitted life isn't worth living. It's a part of what you must do, whatever commitment, whatever covenant you make with God while you're here, to go back and be a better father, to go back to make a difference in the community, to go back and change your life, to decide not to ever use drugs or alcohol again, to decide that you're going to begin to recreate yourself, that you're going to be reborn to a new state of consciousness. Whatever commitment that you make, keep your commitment to your commitment. No matter what. If it's hard, then do it hard. Or keep your commitment to your commitment.
Are you ready for us? Okay, please. Come again? Okay, awesome, miss.
What you're hearing on Tshwane FM. If not, or if you have any complaints about this radio station's programming, please let us know. You can phone the station manager, that's me, Jeremy Thorpe, on 012-382-4650, or you can post your complaint to Tshwane FM, private bag X680, Pretoria 0001, or you can fax us on 012-382-5236. We'll reply to you within 3 days. And if you don't like the reply, you can contact the Monitoring and Complaints Unit of the Independent Communications Authority, ICASA. Their address is private bag X10002, Santon 2146, or you can fax 011-444-1461, or you can phone 011-321-8200. We want you to listen to Tshwane FM, but we're always happy to listen to you too.
Tshwane FM 93.6. Your station, your voice.
37 minutes after the hour, 6 o'clock. A great evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us once more. It is the Capital Talk. We're with you between the hours 6 and 8 p.m. every Monday to Thursday. Cap City's number one. It is what we are, and it is Tshwane FM 93.6, the station that continues to rock you most. Give us a call on 01236. That is 012324936. Thank you so much for all of you that are joining us on the live stream. We're coming through live on YouTube. It is Mokete Radebe. If you go on Facebook, we're available there as Tshwane Space. Told you yesterday that we continue the discussion around, matric results, the 2021 matric results. And that's exactly what we'll be discussing today with the equal education. And furthermore, we do have an author that will be encouraging our matriculants, those who made it and those that could not have made it. Look at, I think at a later stage, issues around property matters, where we look at factors that will enable sellers and buyers to run smooth transaction. Be sure to join us until 8 o'clock as we discuss all these. Says we need to renew our mind, for it's not over until he says it's a state of mind, and we need to renew our mind for that. 39 after 6 o'clock, and we're now joined from the Equal Education. We have on the line Usisi Ntsiki. She's from the Equal Education, and she's all the way from the Western Cape to speak to us tonight. And we'll also be having Untombi Mngomezulu, that is Usisi Nontsikelelo, who's the head of the Western Cape and in the Equal Education organization, joining us tonight. Ntsiki, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us, my sister.
Hi, Mokete, and good evening to the listeners, and thank you for having us this evening.
Thank you so much. You guys actually came in third. I'm just thinking the Western Cape was the first province to actually have COVID-19 related infections among learners, and you came up third in terms of the scorecard. Yeah. And maybe before we speak about the results, the matric results, let's speak about how teaching and learning was affected during this COVID-19 in that area. How were things?
Thank you for having us again. Things were really hectic, you know. And I don't only think it was only hectic in the Western Cape. It was hectic in the country as a whole. We've seen teachers playing the role of being a support system in learners in all the provinces, but also we've seen the highlighted inequality within our public education. We've seen that the public schools and the under-resourced schools were the most affected schools during the pandemic. The issue of learning online has been an issue in public schools and under-resourced schools because of the issue of accessibility. Not every learner, even in a so-called urban area as Western Cape, has access to a phone, a smartphone that they can be able to learn on. Not every learner in the province of Gauteng has those access to those resources. So learners were equally affected by the pandemic, and it was really highlighted, especially during this time, that teaching and learning was really affected, especially in provinces like KZN, Eastern Cape, Limpopo, and these are provinces that we are organized in, and these are rural provinces, where even before the pandemic, things were hectic. Learners from KZN had to walk in a normal year 2 to 3 hours to get to school. The same thing was happening during this pandemic. And learners in the Eastern Cape are still learning under inadequate infrastructure. Even in the KZN, we still have an issue of sanitation. There's still putrid toilets during this time. So learning and teaching was really difficult, and it did affect learners and teachers most importantly during this time. And this is not new to us, physical education, and I'm sure to the viewers. This is something we've been, an issue that we've been campaigning for within our 7 years of existence as equal education, demanding the DBE to actually fix the education system and fix schools, most importantly, in the rural and urban areas and in public schools and under-resourced schools, because this was really highlighted during this time. We've seen the issue of importance of psychosocial support during the pandemic, because we've seen that it wasn't only teaching and learning, it was also the psychological part, where learners were learning under pressure, teachers were teaching under pressure, because there was a close of school within the period of 3 months and more. So there was a catch-up that needed to happen, and it meant that it affected under-resourced schools and public schools and teachers and learners in those schools. So the psychosocial support really was one of the things that needed to be highlighted during this time.
43 after 6 o'clock. You know, when I hear you speaking about this, and actually yesterday we were talking about this, and I was actually even asking the Educators Union of South Africa, because these are issues that are very close to my heart, Ntsiki. And I'm saying this because the majority of professionals in various corporations, including myself, where I am now in the studio, we come from these, disadvantaged schools, where you see the computer for the first time at varsity.
Yeah.
You do not get enough infrastructural support. You don't get enough psychosocial support. And it's even worse for learners that now we're faced with COVID-19, because of the level of inequality was deepening during COVID-19, and it was even much more reflected. And I was saying, I know that the Western Cape is among those that are affected, but at least it's on number 3. I mean, I'm looking at children in Limpopo, the Eastern Cape, and we're taking away nothing from those that have done well, those that have done very well and managed to actually pass. But our biggest challenge in this country, Ntsiki, is that if Ntsiki is from a rural area in the Western Cape, and Ntsiki has managed to pass against all odds, then we unconsciously expect all children from rural areas to, in one way or the other, make it against all odds. And yes, it's good. We need to encourage them to not give up. We need to encourage them, to try by all means. But what happens to those that are incapable? What happens to those that don't have the same resilience? What happens to those that are overpowered by these circumstances? And this is where we as professionals need to come in. And this is my point to the equal education. And I like the work that you guys are doing. But my question is, what other ways are there that you guys are prepared to sort of undertake to ensure that government? I know that the Minister of Finance will be giving out a budget speech, and and there is high hopes around that. But from time and again, even when the money is allocated in education, we see little to nothing being done in terms of equity. Because you cannot, disperse the money equally when there's children that have to cross a river in Eastern Cape before they can go to a school, and then you want to give them the same money in the Eastern Cape as the same money that you're giving to children in Gauteng who need, for instance, a tar road, or who need a new projector, when there's children that legit do not have a toilet in Limpopo, when there's children that do not have a classroom, and you want to bring bright lights in Gauteng. And this is where my challenge is, and my question to the Equal Education, and maybe it's a difficult one, is what measures are there to hold our government more accountable?
Amazing. I like that question. I like it because firstly, I want to say this thing that we always say, and this is, as you know, that we organize in schools, and school learners are our primary members, and they drive equal education as a movement.
Sure.
Education shouldn't be a privilege. It should be a right.
Yeah.
Right? And this is where the conversation is going to. I like that question because in 2013, equal education won a court case against the DBE to ask the Department of Education to actually implement a law that simply speaks to what makes a school. Exactly the issues that we're talking about. The issues of transport, the issues of infrastructure, the issues of how big a classroom should be, how many learners should be inside the classroom, the issue of computer labs, the issue of making sure that schools are safe, schools have fences, right? That is something that we can hold the department accountable to. But what's making this difficult also, you said it, tomorrow the Minister of Finance is speaking, right? And we know that in 2020, there has been budget cuts within the education department. But there was specifically budget cuts within the infrastructure department, within the education department. This then raises questions because we have schools in the KZN that still are struggling in terms of the school infrastructure. We have schools in the Eastern Cape that are still struggling. We have schools in Limpopo that are still struggling in terms of the infrastructure. And you ask yourself, how can the government allow and make the Department of Education a donor department instead of a frontline department? We have a big problem here, right? But it is important for us to come together and make sure that the Department of Education implements the law that makes a school a school. This is called the Uniform Minimum Norms and Standards for School Infrastructure. This is a uniform law that would make a school look like a school. There shouldn't be a difference between an advantaged school or private schools compared to public schools. This should be the same, and this is something that we can hold our government into. But we need to hold our government into saying, so that we don't get answers of saying we don't have budget because our budget was cut. That's why equal education tomorrow is also going to different, going to the parliament to say, Minister Stondo, hands off our education budget, because we know what does this mean to us. We've seen in 2020 the effect of the budget cut is made in schools, but it is important for us to also hold the DBE accountable into making sure that they're implementing this law of minimum norms and standards for school infrastructure.
49 after 6 o'clock, Tshwane FM 93.6. This is exactly where we are. A lot of people are aware of the equal education, but they're not cognizant of to what extent are your capabilities in terms of really clarifying and coming in to solve issues that are faced by learners in schools. Just briefly, take us through in terms of what kind of work are you guys doing, and just during this COVID-19, how difficult it was for you guys to do your work, and what are some of the difficult cases that you guys dealt with?
Yeah, so we are a movement that is advocating for quality education. So we use our voices as a way to raise our frustrations, and learners, most important, to raise their frustrations. A majority of us are people who came out of schools, right, where there hasn't been a textbook, you're sharing a textbook with 4 people.
Sure.
But we've been using our voices in terms of picketing, doing marches, peacefully. So writing letters to the president and not getting any responses, writing letters to the Minister of Basic Education, but also using the young people's voices as a way of finding solutions within the education system. It has been difficult. It has been challenging because we need to also follow the COVID-19 safety precautions. But we haven't forgotten to use the social media, because social media has played a very vital role during this time to us in making sure that our voices are heard as a qualification and there's change within the education system. Tomorrow, for example, we'll be outside Parliament, few of us, just to say when Minister of Finance is doing the speech, we'll be listening, but also we'll be making an alternative speech to say, what do we expect him to say in the speech? Because we feel like learners who are in public schools and under-resourced schools are being left behind every time. We've seen even during this time, private schools opened before the public schools, and learners within the public schools and under-resourced schools would have to play the catch-up plan in making sure that they catch up with those who are in private schools, which is not fair or which speaks to the inequality gap that we've been speaking about over these years of our organizing in as extent.
And just on that inequality, point, and I know that our time is limited, and I will be letting you go. In terms of the curriculum design, and I was speaking to Professor Berihanyan of the Northwest University yesterday, where he was actually, as we were actually discussing that our challenges are far much more deeper than actually the physical, or rather the material conditions that we see of learners, but most importantly as well, the pedagogy or of teaching and learning. It's also a great concern, where you find that a child in a private school, for instance, finds it's been given some sort of support in terms of how the teaching and learning is being delivered, as opposed to a child in Ulusikisiki who's not been given the necessary support and preparedness in terms of curriculum design for when they are sent to varsity. To what extent have you guys sort of intervened in that regard to ensure that indeed, we have sort of like an equal measuring tape when it comes to these young people? Because if you remember, just after 2010, going upwards, our dropout rate in first year at universities was just around 40%, and it was primarily because of that specific reason that some are more prepared than others for this life after basic education. To what extent are you guys involved in that? And is it a point that you guys have started, sort of jumping into sort of pressure government to really look into that?
So it's a fair issue that we've been speaking about, right? So we haven't spoken about the issue of curriculum, but we've been very open and very vocal about the issue of being left behind in terms of teaching and learning. And we've been writing letters even to the Department of Education, and they promised that there would be a catch-up plan for learners that have always been left behind, because the issue of being left behind is not new, right?
Sure.
But also in that, the issue of psychosocial support also needs to come in, because it means there will be pressure from learners to teachers. And from teachers to learners, because we need to do this catch-up plan. And this is something we also want to look into in the year of 2021 to say, what do we do to put the pressure on government to look at the curriculum? Because we know that what happened this year is not only going to bring insight in this year, it's going to affect the next generation of learners that will be coming in the education system. And this is something we really want to challenge this year as a qualification, to say the catch-up plan should be clear, but also in that you need to speak about resources, because we know that the teachers and learners in these same schools that are under-resourced and in public schools don't have the resources to do the catch-up even. You can't speak about the catch-up and then speak about it in a sense of online learning. We know that there are learners who are even well left behind within the online learning. And the issue of learners drop out. Who's making follow-up on those learners, right? Or are we just saying, okay, this dropped out, then it ends there? who is making follow-up, who's supposed to be making follow-up to those winners who have dropped out because of circumstances, but most importantly, because of the pressure that they get in schools. Who is making follow-up and making sure that these winners go back to school and these winners are getting the catch-up that other winners are going to be getting also.
55 minutes have gone since the hour 6 o'clock, and this is Ntsikelelo who's speaking to us at this point in time. She's coming through all the way from the Western Cape, rather. Ntsikelelo Hlulani. She's the head of the Western Cape from the Equal Education Department. Ntsikelelo, thank you so much for speaking to us, my sister. The area that you guys deal with, it's an area that I'm quite passionate about, and really I could speak with you for the next 3 hours, if I were to proceed. But I think for today, let me leave you so that others can also proceed where we've left you. I know that we'll be speaking to the equalizer from the Western Cape as well. But thank you so much for your time, and may you have a lovely evening.
Amazing. Thank you very much for having us. And we want to congratulate the class of 2020, not forgetting the teachers, because we always sometimes congratulate matriculants, but the teachers hold in the support system in those learners. So we want to congratulate the learners who learned through these challenges and circumstances, but also the teachers who had to play the role of being teachers, parents, and social workers in these matriculants. We want to say well done. They've done it for. We're very proud of them.
Indeed. We actually don't sing enough about those teachers, because they look, even they, I mean, some of them actually suffer the abuse from learners because of the frustration that some of these children come with from Ekhaya, where Mokete sees his dad beating his mom and he thinks, you know what, I'm going to take this out on my peers, and when the teacher intervenes, I deal with the teacher. It's just a hectic one. But thank you so much. I did say to you that if we can talk really, we'll need about 4 or 5 hours.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you for having us, and thank you for inviting us in this conversation.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. It's 57 minutes after 6 o'clock. Tshwane FM 93.6. That is Usis Ntsikelelo Hlulani from the Western Cape. We'll now be moving to Ntombi from the Western Cape as well. And then later on, we speak to our author as we speak to the young guys. Look, it's going to be an interesting evening. I love education, and I love young people that are doing great things.
People have spoken. Unlock room 912.
Good morning, my favorite lady, Lena.
Hi, how are you?
How are you, mother?
Oh, good thing.
You make me to every time like I'm asking myself to room 912 because of your voice.
Oh, wow, thank you. We must continue. How's your day?
So good. Just let me hear your beautiful voice. Oh, man.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Man. Not everyone knows you have my life. The lady is lucky. Oh, man, come on, you that is so much.
Room 912, weekdays on Tshwane FM 93.6.
Yo, what up, your boy Questa, the Carton, good boy, your day one, K1 representative, and we out here, you're tuning into Tshwane FM right now. Mind out. Wait, where you going? Where you going? Still right there. Tell me that.
But I never understood that concept, having something to fall back on. If I'm going to fall, I don't want to fall back on anything except my faith. I want to fall forward. I figure at least this way I'll see what I'm going to hit. Fall forward. This is what I mean. Reggie Jackson struck out 2,600 times in his career, the most in the history of baseball. But you don't hear about the strikeouts. People remember the home runs. Fall forward.
Money doesn't grow on trees.
Hello, what's going on? This is Mr. Lisa, and you are listening to Tshwane FM. Zaga, Ziggy,
I didn't know that. Because the 1,001st was the light bulb. Fall forward. Every failed experiment is one step closer to success. You've got to take risks, and I'm sure you've probably heard that before, but I want to talk to you about why that's so important. First, you will fail at some point in your life. Accept it. You will lose. You will embarrass yourself. You will suck at something. There's no doubt about it. And I know that's probably not a traditional message for a graduation ceremony, but hey, I'm telling you, ready for us? Embrace it, because it's inevitable.
I am.
Please stay on the line.
In the acting business, you fail all the time. Yeah, early on in my career, I auditioned for a part in a Broadway musical. Perfect role for me, I thought, except for the fact that I can't sing. So I'm in the wings. I'm about to go on stage, but the guy in front of me, he's singing like Pavarotti. He's just he's just going on and on and on, and I'm just shrinking. I'm getting smaller and smaller. So they say, "Oh, thank you very much, and you'll be hearing from us." So I come out with my little sheet music, and it was Just My Imagination by the Temptations. That's what I came up with. So I hand it to the accompanist, and she looks at it and looks at me and looks out at the director, and it's like, so I start, I'm going to sing. I'm like, once again, coming away with me. And I'm not saying anything, so I'm thinking I'm getting better. So I start getting into it. Running this out. Thank you very much, Mr. Washington. Thank you. So I assumed I didn't get the job. But the next part of the audition, he called me back. The next part of the audition is the acting part of the audition. Now I'm like, hey, okay, maybe I can't sing, but I know I can act. So they pair me with this guy, and again, I didn't know about musical theater. And musical theater is big, so they can reach everyone all the way in the back of the stadium. And I'm more from a realistic, naturalistic kind of acting where you actually talk to the person next to you. So I don't know what my line was. My line was, well, hand me the cup. And his line was, well, I would hand you the cup, my dear. The cup would be there to be handed to you. I said, oh, okay. Well, should I give you the cup back? Oh, yes, you should give it back to me, because you know that is my cup, and it should be given back to me. I didn't get the job. But here's the thing. I didn't quit. I didn't fall back. I walked out of there to prepare for the next audition, and the next audition, and the next audition. I prayed. I prayed. And I prayed. But I continued to fail, and fail, and fail. But it didn't matter, because you know what? There's an old saying, you hang around the barbershop long enough, sooner or later you're going to get a haircut. So you will catch a break, and I did catch a break in January this year.
Hello, what's going on? This is Mzala, and you are listening to Tshwane FM. Zaga, Ziggy,
I did a play called Fences on Broadway. Someone talked about it. Won the Tony Award. And I didn't have to sing, by the way. But here's the kicker. It was at the Court Theater. It was at the same theater that I failed that first audition 30 years prior. The point is, every graduate here today has the training and the talent to succeed. But do you have the guts to fail? Here's my second point about failure. If you don't fail, you're not even trying. I'll say it again. If you don't fail, you're not even trying. My wife told me this great expression. To get something you never had, you have to do something you never did. Les Brown's a motivational speaker. He made an analogy about this. He says, imagine you're on your deathbed, and standing around your deathbed are the ghosts representing your unfulfilled potential. The ghost of the ideas you never acted on. the ghost of the talents you didn't use. And they're standing around your bed, angry, disappointed, and upset. They say, we came to you because you could have brought us to life, they say. And now we have to go to the grave together. So I ask you today, how many ghosts are going to be around your bed when your time comes? You've invested a lot in your education, and people have invested in you. And let me tell you, the world needs your talents, and does it ever. I just got back from Africa like 2 days ago, so if I'm rambling on, it's because I'm jet lagged. I just got back from South Africa. It's a beautiful country, but there are places there with terrible poverty that need help. And Africa is just the tip of the iceberg. The Middle East needs your help. Japan needs your help. Alabama needs your help. Tennessee needs your help. Louisiana needs your help. Philadelphia needs your help. The world needs a lot, and we need it from you. We really do. We need it from you young people. I mean, I'm not speaking to the rest of us up here, but I know I'm getting a little grayer. We need it from you, the young people. So you got to get out there. You got to give it everything you got, whether it's your time, your talent, your prayers, or your treasures. Because remember this, you will never see a U-Haul behind a hearse. You will never see a U-Haul behind a hearse.
Tshwane FM is taking over Pretoria. Tshwane FM 93.6. The future is now.
It's 6 minutes after the hour, 7 o'clock. Those are the great words of Mr. Des in Washington. It's a motivation piece titled Life's Advices. Rather, the life advice that will leave you speechless. A definite must watch. And you remember that likewise. So we do give you a dose of motivation. Just coming up, we'll be joined by Cleopatra Pagat. She's an entrepreneur. And we'll just be reading, rather, she's an author. And we'll be just reading her profile shortly after this. Now, in news that are making headlines, another batch of Johnson & Johnson coronavirus vaccine is expected to land in the country this weekend as South Africa's mass inoculation program gathers steam. And of course, Health Minister Willem Kise has told members of Parliament today afternoon that at least 23,000 healthcare workers have so far been inoculated, and that number is expected to rise to 40,000 by tomorrow. Kise was replying to a debate in the National Assembly on the vaccine rollout. The minister said since vaccination started last week, South Africa has had now joined about 87 countries that had taken the fight against COVID-19 to the next stage. In Gauteng, 500,000 jobs have been lost in Gauteng, and at least 42% of small businesses were forced to close due to the pandemic. Gauteng Premier David Makhura made the announcement during his State of the Province address today, where he also said that he also laid out his 4 priorities for the new financial year, which include plans to boost the economy. Makhura has also highlighted that the province has been seen as the economic hub of the country and is deeply concerned that many municipalities deteriorated during this pandemic. Furthermore, despite there being more employed people in South Africa during the fourth quarter of 2020 as compared to the previous one, the unemployment rate still reached record highs, while the quarterly labor force survey today shown that the number of employed persons increased by 333,000 to 15 million, the third largest increase since the start of the survey in 2008. But now the country clocked the highest unemployment rate since 2008 at 32.5% during the fourth quarter of last year. While some could be encouraged by this increase in the number of employed people, this means very little to many, and as the country has about 39.3 million people of working age who ideally should be absorbed in the labor market if they so seek, had the country not been struggling with the joblessness crisis. In other news, I think this is a big one actually with tomorrow. While there may be little wiggle room as far as the country's fiscus is concerned, civil society and economists today said government will greatly benefit from a budget vote that explicitly laid out plans towards capacitating crime-fighting institutions. This in the wake of Special Investigation Unit Head Andy Mutibi describing corruption allegations linked to the procurement of COVID-19 personal protective equipment as unprecedented. Finance Minister Tito Mboweni is expected to deliver the 2021 budget speech tomorrow, with the hope that more money can be set aside for crime fighting, including graft receiving special attention. Last year, Mboweni said fighting corruption was a top priority, with the SIU, the Directorate of Priority Crime Investigations, and the National Prosecuting Authority receiving an additional 2.4 billion. I think this is sad that we need to spend money in guarding ourselves, in guarding those that are in professional spaces or baska. This is so embarrassing, man. It's 10 minutes after the hour, 7 o'clock. At least Cleopatra Pagati, who is joining us now on the line, will perhaps shed light in terms of what is it that needs to be done for our people to actually get to a point where they need not to now be policed before they can do something that is right. Because I think it's so embarrassing. I mean, imagine that expenditure just to guard ourselves. Just to guard ourselves.
It's ironic, man.
It's ironic. But yeah, this is the person that we're talking about. Ki Ausin Topeng Cleopatra Pagati. She's a child of God, a mom and a wife. She possesses a master's in business leadership qualification from the University of South Africa, and works full-time as an HR specialist. Theo, as she's called by her friends and colleagues, is an author. I call her Theo from now on. As an author of a children's series titled "Building My Character," she believes that it's important to mold children's characters, as this will assist in sustaining their gifts and talents. She's also passionate about living a purpose-driven life and inspiring others to do the same. Theo, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us, my sister.
Good evening, sir. I hope you can hear me. The line is not that crisp from my side, but I can hear you. How are you?
I'm great. We can actually hear you so clear. It's so crystal clear. Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm very good, and I'm grateful to be on your show today. Thank you so much.
Awesomeness. Let's speak about the authorship. At what point did you see yourself as an author?
I think it's a very interesting one, because I think I grew up just feeling like I have something to say, so I think people that have something to say are probably, whether it's authors or writers, whether you are just writing, whether you're writing for a magazine or something like that. But I know that some years ago I started writing children's books, and that is when I actually realized that, wow, I can actually do this. I love it. I feel it is my purpose actually to send some messages out there through writing.
And as you wrote, did it not bother you, the fact that, or the myth that the majority of South Africans are not people that love to read and write? Did that point not discourage you to write?
Yeah, I suppose, it does cross one's mind. But I think as a nation, we are really progressing. I think we are becoming, I don't know whether it's the optimist in me, but I really feel or believe that we are becoming a nation that reads. And again, though, for me was also to say, when you believe something is your purpose, you believe in it so much that you're just going to do what you have to do. As to what happens after that, you try not to really bother yourself much with that. So for me, like, for example, the book that I recently wrote, it was important for me to put pen to paper and just get the book published. As for whether somebody reads the book or not, I believe that I have done my part.
And just within this book, what were the most sort of attractive parts for you? Where do we find the punchlines? Which chapter? Which sections are closely speaking to what you were hoping to achieve as an author?
So the recent book called Redeeming the Time, I think for me, just the timing when I wrote the book is what stands out for me, firstly, because I wrote it during lockdown. And at the early stages of lockdown. I think we were still in lockdown level 5 and 4. And I think during that time, most of us as a country, and not just as a country, but the world, we had a lot of self-introspecting questions. We didn't know what this virus is all about, how our bodies are going to respond, should we get this virus, and so forth. So I think we were sitting with a number of questions, whether should it happen that this virus is the end of us? Are we, prepared? Are we ready to leave this world and so forth? So for me, I think firstly, just the timing of writing this book stands out for me. But then secondly, just the book itself about time. I think that was a critical moment for me to realize that time is such an important, factor in our lives, and yet we take it so much for granted. So for me, if I were to go to parts of the book that really stick to me, it's where we really unpack what time is. I think one of the examples, we tend to make money a reason for us not doing something. But in the book, I touch on a scenario where you actually have all the money in the world, but you don't have the time. Then what good is that money? And I think it's really to try and make the reader see that you may have the money, you may have all these other things that you think you need, but without time, you actually have nothing. But if you have time, then you have everything, because if you have time, you have an opportunity to make money. If you have time, you have an opportunity to work on your health and all the other things that are important to us as human beings. So, yes, I think that would be the chapter that stands out for me. But then the other chapter stands out for me in the book. I hope I can still continue. I'm not.
Proceed.
Okay. So I think the other chapter that is really of importance to me is the first chapter, where I narrate about a phase in my life where I was, going through depression, having suicidal thoughts and things like that. And I think I'm relating or narrating that story to try and make the reader to understand that time really changes everything. With time, things get better. We are given time to get us from eternity, if I can put it that way. Because can you imagine if we didn't have time, you will have a pain forever. But because time regulates, you can only have pain for a certain period. After that period, whether you were taking a painkiller or not, the pain will have to stop because time regulates. And so I think that's the other chapter that is quite important, because I think for me it was also important for the reader to know who Cleopatra is, what she has been through in her life, because I find that sometimes inspirational books, without a story behind, then it's not easy to relate, but if you share your story, I think it makes it easy for other people to really reflect and learn to look at their stories not as something to feel sorry for themselves about and so forth, but to really take their stories, however painful they are, as stepping stones into the future, because time is guaranteed to make things better.
19 after 7 o'clock. A quick one. I think what I found fascinating was the period in which you wrote this book. And I think maybe the listener at home can learn a thing or two. You wrote this book during the lockdown.
Yes, sorry, I didn't get the last part, the part before that, but yes, I did write the book.
No, I was saying I found it quite interesting, that the period in which you wrote this book. So I was just saying, maybe you can advise us, what sort of encouraged you or motivated you to write this book during the lockdown, when everyone was stressed out with whether they'll lose employment, with whether they will die and the likes? What motivated you?
Yes. So for me, I think it was exactly that, to say, should this virus be the end of me? Will I really be able to stand before God and account for my time on this world? Should this virus has been or be the end of me? Will I say I've really emptied myself in this world? I've really done what I came to do, or the contribution that I had to make in this world? And the answer for that was no. And I then had to look, what is it that I felt that at least if this is the one thing that I can do, if I had one last thing to do on earth, what would it be?
Sure.
And for me, it was to write. So I think for me, how I looked at it, to say, instead of sitting there, in fear of, are we going to die? Am I not going to die? Am I going to get this virus? Is my body going to? And I'm not undermining what people went through, because I think this virus has presented serious challenges for all of us. It has resulted in unemployment, depression levels, statistics, they've gone up, domestic violence, and so forth. But for me, it was also important it was more like a wake-up call for me, or an acceleration to get to really be the author that I believe that I was meant to be, but I was taking it for granted, if I'm making sense. So for me, it was really a chance to say it's now or never, So if I'm going to write a book that I can go out there and really say this is, the best that I could do during lockdown, then it's now. And besides that, of course, lockdown provided us with, ample opportunities, because now instead of being at church on Sunday, you were at home. And that was time for one to write. Instead of the Saturdays where I could have been wherever attending to this and that, then I had time to write. So I used that time for writing.
22 after 7 o'clock. Now, your book, you speak about helping young people to make decisions at an early age. Why do you think it's important for us to invest in young people at an early age?
So I've authored a number of books. So this one, Redeeming Time, is the one that I wrote during lockdown. So this one, the target market is everyone. If children can read it, can read it. So I also then have those in my character. That one is a series of books for children. And for me, those books are meant to mold children's characters, because I believe children are born with gifts and talent, and they go to school for their intelligence or their brains to be further developed, for them to be able to think and rationalize, make decisions, and so forth. But I find that we don't spend enough time in molding their characters, and I believe that it's in molding their characters that really we can have a healthy society that has healthy children, because a child can be talented at school, but if they don't know how to control their thoughts, if they don't know how to control their emotions, if they don't know how to behave, then even that intelligence that they have and apply at school then may actually become a detriment for them instead of an advantage. So building my character essentially just is trying to just build up children's characters, to say, yes, I know you are. Yes, I know you have this gift, you have this talent, and maybe as parents, we don't all have the same skills. Not all parents have studied child psychology, how to raise a child, how to groom a child, and so forth. So building my character then serves to assist parents, it serves to assist coaches and so forth on how to mold children's characters.
24 minutes after 7 o'clock. Now, before I let you go, two things that are important. One, how much does the book go for? How is it accessible? And where can people sort of get to contact you?
Okay, so the redeeming the term book goes for 150, and the children's books are going for 100 francs. And where people can find me is on Facebook. I'm on Facebook, Cleopatra Pagati on Facebook. I am also on Instagram, Cleopagati_SA. Or they can reach me on WhatsApp on 082 388 4554. 082 388 4554.
Interesting. A dose of motivation to the young people that were writing matric. Some made it, some couldn't get the mark that they wanted, some didn't even make it to the paper, and obviously some couldn't even make it to to varsity. What's your message to them?
So I just want to say to them to, take heart. I think that will be the first one, because we've been as a country through a difficult year. It was a difficult year last year. So just for a matriculant to go and sit and even attempt to write a paper, this was an achievement by itself. So I think matriculants need to understand that failure doesn't mean the end. Just because they didn't make it this year, it doesn't mean that they will not make it again in future. And so they really need to, talk to themselves, because I'm not even sure if parents will be able to comfort them or encourage them in a manner that they need. Because I think as parents as well, they may be feeling disappointed. They may be feeling that they have failed the children in some way or another. So I think this is really a time for the matriculant, for that young person to decide how they are going to let this moment define them. Are they going to let this moment define them as a failure? Or are they going to use this as a stepping stone into the future? They need to remember that failures are not a reflection of our characters. Failures are not necessarily a sign that we are not good enough or we're not intelligent enough or whatever, because failures happen due to different reasons. So really sitting down and reflecting on what could have been the cause. And like I have already mentioned, one of the biggest causes we know, matric is hard as it is, without everything that we went through as a country, as the world last year. Now, for you to write matric under such extreme circumstances, that is a lot. That is a lot. So we're happy for those that have made it, but then, so you didn't make it. There's going to be a next time. Do what you need to do, but just bounce back. I know depression is probably knocking, you are feeling like you will never get another chance, you will never get another opportunity, or you're not good enough. And with children nowadays, it's even more serious, because there's social media, there's WhatsApp status, the different aunties and whoever, the uncles, the fathers, they're posting, those that have passed, they're posting all those things, and you sitting there, you have failed, and you have to look at this. But I want to assure you that time will vindicate you. Time will make things better. How you are looking at the situation now and how you are feeling now will totally be different to next year this time. So I want this young person to think about a year from now on. How do they see their situation changing a year from now on? And that's what they need to focus on, because dwelling on the failure is not going to help.
29 after 7 o'clock, Tshwane FM 93.6. That is our Cleopatra Pagati speaking to us at this point in time. Cleo, thank you so much for your time, and have a lovely evening, my sister.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for having me. You too.
Awesomeness.
Okay, then. Bye-bye.
Bye. 29 after 7 o'clock, Tshwane FM 93.6. We are the station that rocks you most. Tony T is in the house.
Yes, sir.
Killer Rastam Pando.
Yeah.
A quick break. When we come back, we jump into what is happening into the world of property, and then we wrap it up.
You know, some of the churches, they don't need your qualification. They have nothing to do with your education, which is boy. Since it was 1909, 1910, long before I was born, Saulo, 1916, which is 1928, Mandela ba motshwara e ba boya. Saulo o le seala. Ga le bjale ke 2015. Ba tšhaba le yopela ba e hama. Raba Saulo. Raba.
Tshwane FM 93.6.
Actually, I'm putting anything bad. What I'm putting on the thing, Motala will never consider that police. Mara Ashimi is something to let Labra. And my Kusaki Manta, Motala will not consider that Labra. What's that name? I give you over the guy. Maraman, when I know what I'm scared. Erokuna Kusaka, you can get a tram. I don't go fair and no.
Oh my gosh.
Makusagi aratela hore banna ba teng ba go makuso ba re rekela meala ebile ba re fosa pila
Tshwane FM, the mother of all radio stations.
31 after 7 o'clock, Tshwane FM 93.6. We are the station that rocks you most. Tony T is in the house. Just short and sharp, we jump into property now. Factors to take into consideration for smooth transactions between sellers and buyers. That's exactly what we're talking about tonight.
Yes, sir.
Let's jump into it, my brother.
All right.
Do you have a good week? A good weekend, rather?
Not quite. Even today I was just hectic.
How's mommy?
Oh, she's actually doing well. Yeah. So her operation actually went well.
Yeah.
She's recovering very well as well, and she's just expected to go back in 2 weeks' time just for follow-up.
That's great. We thank the Lord.
Yes, sir.
We thank the Lord.
So yes, guys, as Mokete has mentioned, so for today's topic, I want to focus on several things that purchasers and sellers can do to assist the conveyancer to ensure that the transaction runs smoothly.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I get questions of, hey Joe, when will the property register into my name?
Yeah.
People think that it can happen in a very short space of time. Yes, in other countries, you do find countries where it happens in a week.
Countries?
Yeah.
Okay.
Literally in a week.
Yeah.
But then obviously in South Africa, when our system is still a bit slow,
yeah.
On average, it takes about 3 months. But then that 3 months can also, it can add by a couple of weeks, even months, also years. You can find properties that register only after 2 years.
Sure.
Because of certain problems that were encountered during the transfer process.
I hear you.
So firstly, I'll start with sellers. So I'm just gonna mention about 7 points that can help sellers to ensure that the transaction does run smoothly so that the deadline can be met. So the first thing is that when the conveyancer receives the offer to purchase, there's certain documents that they'll require from the seller. So what's most important is that when they are requested to provide the FICA documents, which is an original ID copy, and also a proof of residence that's not more than 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the second thing. And then number 2, the second thing you need to do is that you need to supply your bond account number to the attorney. Because in most cases, what might need to happen is that they might need to send a letter to the bank to inform them that you want to cancel your bond.
Sure.
So that's the second thing that one needs to do. And then the third thing is to immediately supply the conveyancer with the latest rates and taxes account, because now they need to request for those clearance certificates from the municipality. So it's important to do that as soon as possible. At the moment they ask you to provide those details, just do it immediately.
Sure.
The fourth thing that I want to focus on as well is you need to also provide photos of, let's say, electric meter and also the water meter.
Sure.
Because now the municipality is also going to need those figures. Sometimes just to show just to make sure that the figures are correct or corresponding with what they have at their office. Must buy. And then the fifth thing is that in most cases, there is a stage whereby the parties will be called to come sign the documents. So it's important that when they request you to come and sign the documents, just go there as soon as possible. And then the next point also comes back to this one. So here's a very most important point of all the points that I mentioned for sellers.
Yeah.
If it happens that you won't be available, or you'll be moving, or you'll be active, or out of the country or out of the city, please inform the attorney, because now what can happen is that you might be that side and there's something that's needed and you're not there.
Sure.
What that can do is that it can delay the transaction now. That's another very important factor. And then also, so basically it's important to notify the conveyancer in case you do happen to want to leave, or when you will not be available during the time the property has to transfer. And then the last point I want to make for sellers is that you need to make sure that all your building plans are up to date. Some transactions are being delayed because of the building plans. Let's say your property will extend, but then the way you extended the property wasn't according to the municipality. It happens that now, because the new buyer or the purchaser wants to improve the property, he's going to request those building plans. And if they're not in order, you'll have to now get, the relevant people to do the building plans, go to Tshwane or the municipality to fix those. So it can also take time. So ensure that the updates are correct for sellers. I mean, when it comes to building plans.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah. So now I just want to move on to purchasers now.
Yeah.
So purchasers, you also need to determine, what you need to determine is that you need to see if the transaction does fall under the Consumer Protections Act. So to give you an example, for instance, if I were to buy a property from you, and then deal ena, it's just between you and me.
Yeah.
So me as a purchaser, there's nothing protecting me as a consumer.
I hear you.
But then now if there's a third party involved, for instance, an estate agent, that's where you as the seller can be protected, me as a buyer as well can be protected. For instance, as a buyer, it's the responsibility of the estate agent to disclose all the information.
Oh, yeah. So they need to do their homework.
They need to do their homework.
About both the seller and the background checks the buyer.
Yes, something like that. But most importantly, what you're selling to the person.
I hear you.
Yes, because it forms under the Consumer Protections Act. So that's the first thing I'd like to mention. And then the second thing that purchasers need to do is that they need to establish the bond amount of which the bank is willing to offer them. I keep on saying this, that before you buy a property, just go see how much the bank can possibly offer you. Because you find people that they just make an offer and then only they go to the bank, only to find out that the bank can't actually offer the amount that was offered on the offer to purchase. So for instance, let's say the property that you want to buy is 700,000 rand. You conclude the deal, and then obviously the deal will say that because you buy, you're gonna use the bank. They'll give you about 30 days to get your documents ready with the bank for the quotation. What could possibly happen is that the bank can be like, no, based on your credibility and your affordability, we can actually only give you 500,000 rand. So now what this does now, you need to now start negotiating or renegotiating with the seller to change the price from 700 to 500,000 rand. What that could possibly do, the seller could possibly decline it. That's the first thing that can happen, So it's very important to first just get pre-qualified so that you know how much you can possibly get in order to buy a property from the bank.
Amazing. 38 after 7 o'clock, Tshwane FM 93.6. 20T, it's busy with issues around property. Are you in the process of buying a property? Are you a graduate? You've just started working. You don't know the ins and out, and you're considering, should I rent? Should I buy? What is the right decision? And here's 20T with all the relevant information. Please proceed there.
Yes. So the third point, here's another important point. And this thing, it's something I've seen from other estate agencies or other offer to purchases, if I can use that term, whereby the offer to purchase won't really have an attachment such as the bond transfer, the transfer costs and the bond transfer costs as well. So what does happen is that, for instance, at Seed Properties, the one that works in Pretoria East, what we do is that on our offer to purchase, one attachment that we attach to the document is the bond and transfer costs. So to show you as this purchaser that if you're buying this property, this is how much you should expect to pay for transfer costs.
Yeah.
For those who are not sure what transfer costs are, so transfer costs are those costs that are involved in buying a property. It's excluded from the purchase price. So if the purchase price is, for instance, 500,000 rand, you should have at least a minimum of about 30,000 rand as part of transfer costs. But then those costs, they differ from property to property, and also the conveyancer that is being used to do or to conclude that transaction. And then also, while we're on this, so if you're buying the property cash, the transfer costs are actually much cheaper. But then if you're using the bank has to appoint an attorney to actually help you register this bond. So that's additional fees. In most cases, you'll notice that it's almost double the price. So for instance, if you're buying it cash and they say the transfer costs are 14,000 Rand, if you're going to use the bank, chances are it might go to like 28,000 or 30,000 Rand. So that's something you guys need to consider. So just to reiterate this point, make sure that you know what the transfer costs are before you make the offer to purchase. And then the fourth point that I'd like to mention is that if you happen to be buying in an estate whereby there's like something called a homeowners association, or you're buying a flat whereby it's a sectional title scheme, obviously those complexes or those estates, they've got rules. So it's always wise to go over the rules, read them thoroughly, and see if you will actually be able to stay in that property. Because now imagine, I remember last week I had this client of mine who wanted to buy this 2-bedroom unit in Arcadia. And then one thing I mentioned was, you know what, I need to show you the rules, because now you as a cultural person, you can't just come and have a ritual here. You know, it's very important to understand those things. So if you're buying in an estate, in a complex, or buying a flat, make sure that you do read over the rules that govern that specific complex or estate before you consider doing the offer to purchase. Something very important as well. And then,
you know, I've actually never thought of it. Or you know, can I kill an animal or not? No. I could imagine it is the home. It would be very nice.
Well, it's tricky. It's you guys need to introduce the ancestors. So now it's a situation of, I don't know, maybe go back home. It gets complicated.
You link them. Bluetooth. Introduce from for 2 after 7 o'clock, Tshwane FM 93.6. And we're wrapping up now on the purchasers.
So there's just about 2 points left.
All right.
So the second last point is make sure that you have a tax number.
Sure.
So buying a property, you may look in a tax number, you know, because there's tax affairs that are related to buying a property.
True.
You know, I can't really dwell much on this information, on this specific point, because I'm not completely familiar with the main topic, or I don't specialize in tax, if I could put it that way. And then the last point is the same as the seller, whereby you need your FICA documents. FICA documents, it's an original ID and also your proof of residence. So that's just about it.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Tony T, for that lovely presentation. 42 after 7 o'clock, Tshwane FM 93.6. That's exactly where we are. We leave it here tonight, and thank you so much for your listening pleasure. This one is the Soweto Central Chorus, featuring something Soweto. It's a song titled Bawo. Good evening. We're back again next week. The nighttime team will come through between now and midnight.
You know what's annoying? So I don't know if you noticed that there were 3 girls, right? One of the girls is actually my ex.
This one?
She's beautiful. About to tell me what that is. So his dad is actually one of the managers or CEO of I don't know what's the thing. Already night.
This bike, we can.
I think I know she's into
c'est tout ce comme on dit à Bonga, go by. Santé Trinidad, Titi Charles, Lucie, tout ce